Sit down and grab your lunch. It's time for the Bolts Brown Bag, the only show where you make the call.
Well, where were you on October 5th? Because that was the last time that we sat down to a Bolts Brown Bag and actually got to talk about a Chargers victory, but we get to do so again today. Welcome to Bolts Brown Bag Live at 10news.com, along with John Gennaro from the Mighty 1090 and boltsfromtheblue.com. I'm Ben Higgins, and they went to Jacksonville. They had a 6-game losing streak. They come back from Jacksonville. They have a 1-game winning streak. Does it mean anything? I don't know, but I'm a little happier than I was on Saturday.
If I hadn't watched the game, I'd be pretty sure that it would have some sort of meaning. I'd be like, yeah, they finally got off the schneid, and I guess their playoff chances still exist in some way. But I watched the game, and all I really took away from it is the Jaguars are bad. That is a bad football team. And I talked to a couple Jags bloggers, writers, reporters before the game, Friday and Saturday leading up to the game, and I said, how has this team won 3 of their last 4? Are they finally coming together? Are they finally playing well? They all said the exact same thing. The referees. They said the referees have just been handing us victories, and that wasn't the case against the Chargers. If anything, the Jaguars hurt themselves with penalties in this one.
Well, technically the Chargers are still alive in the playoff hunt because every team in the NFL is technically still alive in the playoff chase.
Yes.
I think it's like one of the latest times ever in the NFL that has happened. Now, even if the Chargers won their last 5 games and finished 8-8, it would still take a series of escalatingly improbable outcomes to get the Chargers into a wild card spot at 8-8.
I actually heard the statistics right before we started. If the Chargers win their next 5 games, they finish 8-8. They have a 13.5% chance of making the playoffs if they win all their games. So that means not only do they have to beat the Broncos twice, beat the Chiefs, beat the Dolphins, beat the Raiders, they then still have an 86% chance of not making the playoffs after doing that.
So it's not good, but hey, it's still there as a possibility. Now, you can join the program by tweeting us using the hashtag BoltsBrownBag. Tweet at me, tweet at John Gennaro. You can also vote in our poll question, which is up right now at the Bolts Brown Bag page at 10news.com. Look there on the right side of the screen where we're talking right now and scroll down a little bit. And you'll see today's question, which is, which game do you think the Chargers turned in their best performance of the season now through 11 games? And I left 4 options. You've got the 3 wins against the Detroit Lions, the Cleveland Browns, and at the Jacksonville Jaguars. And I threw in the loss at the Green Bay Packers that went down to the final play. And so far, all the early voting is leaning toward the loss at the Green Bay Packers as being the Chargers' best performance of the season. John, what do you think? Or is it off the board selection?
I don't know. Those are all, none of those were impressive to me. None of those wins, and even the loss to the Packers. I guess the Lions win because the team was pretty much infallible for the second half of the game.
That was definitely the best half of play, but they played so poorly in the first half.
Yeah.
I thought the Browns win maybe was the most complete performance.
I actually didn't see the Browns game. I went back and saw some highlights and whatever, but it seemed to me that wasn't they haven't had a wholly impressive game yet, right?
Yeah, I thought Cleveland actually played decently in that game, and the Chargers ended up getting the win, but beating Cleveland at home is not impressive. I think the point of the poll question is to kind of illustrate there isn't a lot to choose from this season. A win over the Jaguars is not that impressive. Even though it's a road win and the team feels very good about itself today and they can point, hey, we've got character, we didn't throw in the towel on the season. A win over the Jags is nothing to write home about. A win over the Browns is nothing to write home about. And a win over the Lions is nothing to write home about. I mean,
right.
those are the 3 victories, none of which is blowing up your skirts at this point of the year.
No letters being written home, no skirts being blown up at this point in the season. And as far as what I saw, it looked like the Jaguars could have won this game. They probably should have won this game. They went back and forth on offense from keeping Blake Bortles to throwing short, easy, safe passes to occasionally throwing a risky one downfield. And there didn't seem to be a good balance there. And lest we forget, Blake Bortles got penalized twice for being over the line of scrimmage when throwing into the end zone. Both times they were inside the Chargers' 10-yard line. both times got turned into field goals. If he's a yard back on both of those throws, the Jaguars probably win this game. That's the difference between this win and this loss.
The Chargers dominated in the red zone, scoring touchdowns while the Jags had to settle for field goals.
Right.
And the Chargers won the turnover battle. I believe there was just the one.
There was just the one.
The Manti Te'o interception. When you do both of those things,
you tend to win.
You tend to win, and you have to actually not play that well the rest of the game for it to end up as close as the final score was, just a 6-point game at 31-25.
Right, although I guess it's not included as a turnover, but it probably should be, the blocked punt.
Right.
So that almost evens it out a little bit. That made this game seem a lot closer than what it should have been. But really, the Chargers didn't win this game as much as, I mean, did you see anything from the Jaguars defense at all? I didn't see anything in the secondary. I saw no pass rush. They didn't even really stop the run, although, you know, Melvin Gordon had his best game of the season and still didn't look that good. So I was looking at this Jaguars team expecting them to come out with something. I didn't know what that thing would be, but something, and they had nothing.
Yeah, I thought with the talk and the Jags having won 2 in a row and being just a game out of first place, I was expecting to see a better Jags team than the one we saw yesterday, to be sure.
Well, and they're no comparison to what the Chargers are facing this Sunday in the Denver Broncos. I mean, the Chargers could have won this game by 1,000 points, and I would still be going, I don't know if they can beat the Broncos even at home, even with momentum on their side, and even with, and this is something we need to dive into because we've dove the other way plenty of times, even with Mike McCoy going for it on 4th down, having a little fun, letting loose on the reins a little bit. This was a different Mike McCoy than what we're used to.
All right, let's bring it up. The elephant sitting here in our cafe patio, because last week I was pretty adamant calling for Mike McCoy's job. And I'm not changing my opinion at this point either based on one victory. But to be completely fair, I liked what Mike McCoy did yesterday with his coaching. I liked that he went for it on 4th down with a 5-point lead, 4th and 7 with 9 minutes to go in that gray zone of the 37, 38-yard line where so often we see Mike McCoy chicken out and punt, and I hate that decision. I hate it because normally you kick it into the end zone and you've gained about 15 yards, and 1 or 2 plays later the team has already passed where you kicked it, and it's like, why didn't you take the opportunity to put the game away when you had a chance? This time they took the opportunity. Phillip Rivers scrambled for the 1st down. They converted into a touchdown, made it a 2-score game, which turned out to be pretty important in the large scheme of things thanks to the block punt.
Yeah, because they ended up winning by only 6 points. So had they not gone for it then, they definitely could have lost this game. Really, I mean, this all boils down to 2 things. Number 1, the Jaguars are bad, right? We can agree to that. The Jaguars are bad. Number 2, the Chargers could have lost that game to a bad team, extended their losing streak to 7 games with the Broncos coming to town, the Chiefs after that in Kansas City. This could have been a 9, 10, 11, 12-game losing streak had they not won this game. So that's the one good thing we can take away from it, right? The losing streak is over, at least this one. There may be another one coming up.
In our squadcast this week, we both kind of basically said to Mike McCoy also, lighten up, Francis.
Yeah.
You're so serious. You're so dour.
I think I said he has to learn how to have fun.
And I thought we saw a little bit of that as well. And after the game, I mean, who was this guy really getting into it? Listen to Mike McCoy talking about the decision to go for it on 4th down and 7 in the 4th quarter with 9 minutes to go.
Didn't want to deal with you guys after the game if I didn't do it. That's why. No, honestly, it was a certain situation. No, you gotta have some fun. Glad some guys are laughing in here. At least we're having a smile. It's nice to smile every once in a while again, isn't it? It's always nice to smile in here. It's been a long time.
But I thought it was a great call by Mike, going for it there. The field goal didn't do a ton for you with what the score was, and that was big. That drive, that whole drive was huge. Obviously, we'd like to finish the game a little better at the end, but that drive there to put us up 12 was a big-time drive.
McCoy even went on to joke and call Phillip Rivers his speedster, the secret weapon that they've been holding on to all season, and it's a Mike McCoy that we have rarely, if ever, seen over 3 years now as coach of the Chargers.
First of all, why does a hoodie look like a spacesuit on Phillip Rivers? He looked like he was ready to go into space.
Although that was another sign of McCoy kind of loosening up. Usually they have the dress code for the travel,
Yeah.
and he told the team, forget it, just be comfortable.
Yeah, wear your
what you want.
sweatpants, your T-shirts, whatever you want to wear, go for it. And he himself seemed to be attributing that to the fact that they were a little looser, a little more ready to play. Which, sure, if that was the problem the whole time, you probably still have bigger problems. But good on him for identifying something and trying to fix it. As far as McCoy, he seemed, I don't want to say drunk, but he seemed happy, excited, just way more pumped up than you should be after a Jaguars win. But you have to realize how much this has just been wearing on him.
Well, victory is like 150 proof.
Yeah.
I mean, for these guys, who have been without, they've gone dry for the last 56 days. It's like taking a big shot of moonshine, a victory. I mean,
Right.
there was giddiness, just not having that monkey on your back of a big losing streak. Now, the question is, and I know, and especially on Twitter, I saw this a lot yesterday, complaining, okay, that now the Chargers decide to win a game. Now that they're out of it, they're 2-8, they're fighting for a draft pick. Now they go ahead and decide to win a game, and that is just a philosophy that I can't get on board with. I'm not team tank. I want to see the team win games, even if it costs them a couple of draft spaces at the end of the year. I don't want them to go into next season riding a 12-game losing streak, because I think that can actually have a hangover effect. Look at the Philadelphia 76ers of the NBA. They lost their last 10 last year, and granted, they're still horrible, but now they've just come out and lost 18 more in a row to start this year, make it 28 straight. I don't want to see the Chargers put in that position in the offseason.
I am absolutely 100% team tank, because while I agree with you that it can have a carryover effect, a hangover effect in the next season, I think that's only true with the same coaches, the same coaching staff. You get this feeling of, how are we going to get any better? I mean, that's true of the Philadelphia 76ers. They lost all those games last year, came in with the exact same roster, exact same coaching staff, added one or two players through the draft and expected to be better. Everyone sort of knew it's not going to get any better. It's bad there. But if you fire Mike McCoy, fire the entire coaching staff, start over fresh, now you give people a belief of, okay, this is how we turn it around. The problem with the tank right now is it's impossible for the Chargers, because to tank, you don't ask the players to play less, to try and lose. That's impossible. They're never going to do that. It hurts their own free agent value, and they're just not programmed that way. You can start playing worse players, backup players, younger players, knowing they're not as talented. You're going to get some more losses. You're going to get a better player
Under
in the
the
draft.
guise of development and getting guys experience and
Yes.
better for the future.
You can sell it. There's a PR firm somewhere that knows how to sell this, and it can be sold. The problem is the people that are making those calls about which players should be on the field are the head coach, who's the only way he can save his job right now is maybe 5 more wins and a bunch of luck, and the GM, who's got a hot seat as well. They're not necessarily looking for more losses because it just makes them look worse. They're trying to win. So the tank would have to come down from John Spanos, and that's just not going to happen.
But to me, the bottom line is, if you don't trust the front office and the coaching staff to pick the right players in the draft, it doesn't matter if you're picking 1st, 5th, or 15th. And right now, I know there's a big trust issue with Tom Telesco,
Yes.
based on what he did in the last draft, and Melvin Gordon, who has not worked out at all, especially moving up to pick him in the first round. So if you think Tom Telesco is still going to be the guy, I don't know that it really matters. Conversely, though, if he is the guy, or they bring in someone else who's got an eye for talent as the new general manager, they can make it work at 2nd, at 5th, at 8th. A good GM is going to bring in a good player with a top 10 pick, if you give him some, resources and a spot to work with there.
Yeah, but you're not going to get a new GM if they keep winning. I mean, if they beat the Jaguars and they beat the Dolphins, and maybe they beat the Broncos in Week 17 in a meaningless game when the Broncos play, I guess Peyton Manning would be their backup quarterback. If you could manage to win those 3 games, now you're in a position where you're 6-10, you're out of the top 5, and they're going to keep the GM, and they're going to think about keeping the head coach too. That's poison. Being in that middle ground and not winning games, not going 8-8 and not having a top 5 pick, that middle ground is absolute poison to the franchise. And you can see it by looking at this team now. Outside of Phillip Rivers and a couple of guys who are going to be gone next year, there's no talent on this roster.
I'm sorry. I just can't get over the thought of the Broncos announcing Week 17. We're going to rest our starters. Brock Osweiler. We're going to sit him down. We're going to throw Peyton Manning coming in for the last game of the season, so our real starter can actually have some rest going into the playoffs.
Peyton, come on, give Brock a rest. Go on in there and, have your victory lap. Go ahead and have your victory lap against the Chargers. You're throwing to the third-string tight end and the third-string running back.
John, it was not a good week for our NFL picks competition. All three of us, you, myself, and Chris Ello, only had one correct selection. Now, you got your 2-point pick.
I don't know what you're talking about. I played defense. That may not be an offensive.
You stopped us. Yeah, you held on to your lead.
I played defense, and, I played possum a little bit. I let you guys go ahead and pick the Jaguars and the Saints and the Bills because I knew what was going on.
All right, so your Vikings 2-point pick increases your lead to 41-39 over me.
Woo.
Chris in third place at 35. But with 6 points available every week and still 5 more weeks to go in the NFL season, anybody's ball game in our season-long picks competition.
Playing lockdown defense right now.
Yeah.
No one's getting past me.
All right, we'll see. We'll see. Time to give out our Bolts Brown Bagger of the Game award, and we differed on this one.
We did.
But since I get to pick, the graphic is going to go to Manti Te'o, who had, I thought, the best play that he has made of his career with the interception. And while, perhaps the spirit of the Bolts Brown Bagger is to pick someone a little bit more under the radar, I thought that play was so instrumental to the outcome of the game. The additional 7 points that it afforded the Chargers going into the locker room at halftime was just everything in that game to me. It changed the entire course, the entire strategy of the second half, and it was quite an individual play by a linebacker. It's the kind of play, quite frankly, that the Chargers drafted him to do out of Notre Dame, because that's the kind of plays he made for the Fighting Irish.
He's still half of a linebacker. He still can't tackle. He still can't bust up a running play by putting his nose down and getting through the line. He's still a very flawed player. The one thing he can do well is drop back in coverage and catch the ball. And he got a chance to do it against a Jaguars team in a very ill-advised throw by Blake Bortles, if I say so myself. Denzel Perriman, who played right next to Manti Te'o, I thought actually had an even better game overall. Played a little bit of pass coverage, did it well, stopped the run as much as possible. I mean, the Jaguars have this game if they can get their running game going. And this is really the first time I can remember all year where the Chargers defense stopped the running game. And I haven't looked at the snap counts, but I'm pretty sure the biggest reason for that is I think Denzel Perriman started over Donald Butler.
Well, Denzel Perriman won it last week, and I like to spread the love around a little bit. Actually, you know what? He was supposed to start. I heard Mike McCoy talking about this. Denzel Perriman was supposed to get the start, and the ear flap, the foam, came out of his helmet on the opening kickoff, and his equipment wasn't ready, so he couldn't go in on the first play.
So he didn't
technically he didn't start, but he had been chosen to start, and then an equipment malfunction prevented him from actually doing so.
And I think he did end up getting the bulk of the snaps. And if you want to go back and look at why T.J. Yeldon was held to 36 yards rushing, probably the biggest reason for that is Denzel Perriman going sideline to sideline, doing all the things that we hoped Donald Butler would do when the Chargers gave him that big contract.
Really, if you see someone hitting someone hard on the Chargers defense nowadays, it's almost always Denzel Perriman.
Exactly.
It really is, and that's how it's going. Now, Javonte Herndon would have been my other choice.
And that was my guy.
Yeah.
Because he did a very good job where a lot of other people have tried and nobody has succeeded, and that was in the punt return game. And normally a good punt returner is going to give you 10 yards per return. I think he had a couple of fair catches as well. He ended up with 16.5 yards per return. So on
33 yards on 2 returns.
Yes.
Which added to the 1 yard that the Chargers have had previously.
Gives them 34.
34. But I've got to say, it must be the first time in NFL history that a team has multiplied by 33 their total season punt return yardage, especially in week 11 or week 12 of the NFL season. Imagine if they had just had 10, they would have had to get 330 punt return yards just to multiply that by 30.
Right, and this wasn't Dante Hall. This wasn't what was Hester's first name for the Bears?
Devin.
This wasn't Devin
Still
Hester. This wasn't an outstanding punt return display by Javonte Herndon. He caught the ball. He ran forward. That's the one thing.
But
we
the
were
Chargers,
begging for
the
people
Chargers
to do.
weren't buried in field position because of it all game long, which they've done all season long, where they've taken the ball inside their own 20. The other team has had better field position. It really is a big reason why they have lost some of those close games, is their just utter domination or being dominated in the field position game.
Yeah, I haven't looked it up since the game, but I did look it up yesterday morning. The Chargers' average start position for the season before the Jaguars game was the 30-yard line. Their opponents was the 42. So they were on average starting a full 12 yards back from where their opponents were. You're going to lose that game every single time. So I think they did a better job of that against Jacksonville, which is a big reason why the offense was more consistent, why the defense was able to get stops.
All right, John, let's bring our web producer, Ferris, who's got his 3-question segment, joining us again, and usually some sort of Bengals reference at some point on this thing.
Not today.
Not today. They won.
Nothing.
They're back in the win column.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So first question, the AFC is a little like the NBA's Eastern Conference. It's weak. It's a mess. There are 7 teams that are either 6-5 or 5-6. So who's going to emerge from the fray?
I definitely think the Chiefs are going to be a wild card team now after they beat the Bills yesterday. Are they NFC or the AFC?
AFC.
AFC, yeah.
I think the Chiefs are one of the top 3 or 4 teams in the conference.
You know, I don't know exactly how they put together the stat, but Football Outsiders has a stat they call DVOA,
Yes.
which basically ranks every team by all the stats put together.
Yeah.
And they tweeted today that their new #1 team in the league
The Kansas City Chiefs.
is the Kansas City Chiefs in DVOA.
Yeah.
So how did they go from 1-5 to 6-5? How did that happen?
Basically, it was a combination of a couple things. One, Jeremy Maclin's got worked into the offense, so now their offense isn't just that dink and dunk stuff. They do occasionally throw it downfield. Their offensive line has gotten healthy and come together. But more than anything, their defense, which was made up of a lot of really good players who weren't working on the same page, are now working on the same page. And Eric Berry, coming back from cancer treatment, has gotten better every single week to the point where now they're not even worried about what's happening deep down the field. They know Berry's got it, and the front 7 or front 8, if you want to factor in their strong safety, can just focus on stopping the run, getting to the quarterback. Their defense at this point might be as good as the Denver Broncos.
And then I think the other wild card spot actually comes down to the Steelers and the Texans.
Yeah, the Steelers are starting to fade a little bit. They're losing players to injury, it seems like, every week. Ben Roethlisberger left yesterday's game with a concussion. The Texans, I think they're going to end up winning that division, but I could see the Colts maybe sneaking in with a wild card. I have my eye, just for wild card purposes, I think either the Jets or the Bills are going to find a way to get in.
Okay.
Those are the two guys.
Tougher division, though. I mean, don't they both have games against the Patriots? Well, the Bills are done with the Patriots.
Bills are done with the
That's good
Patriots.
for
I think the
them.
Jets have played them once.
Yeah.
And so, but they're both just they're teams that are built for December. They play defense. They run the ball, smash football. They're not so reliant on throwing the ball around, although the Jets have gone to that a little bit more than they have in the past. Those two teams are just very, very strong. They beat you up front. I think one of them is going to end up with a wild card, and then I think the other one is the Chiefs for sure, unless they can find a way to catch the Broncos.
All right, question number 2.
All right, so both Jimmy Graham and Gronk went down yesterday. Graham is out for the season. He's a week to week. It kind of brought up the question, the football's changing, the way it's played is changing. Is the idea of the tight end position, is it antiquated?
What is the idea of the tight end position? You need
Exactly.
to tell me what it is before I can decide whether or not
It changed long ago.
Well,
though.
what was it? 2 years ago, Jimmy Graham challenged that he was a tight end.
Right.
Right, and he lost
Right.
that challenge.
Because he said he was more like a wide receiver.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you think he was right in his challenge?
Yeah. I think, I mean, it depends. Different teams play different offensive sets. The same way, different teams play 3-4 and 4-3 defenses. Some teams are going to want that tight end that can block and catch the football. Gary Barnidge for the Cleveland Browns does a very good job of both of those things. Travis Kelce does a very good job of both of those things. But if you get a guy like Gronk or a guy like Jimmy Graham, yeah, they're essentially oversized wide receivers.
Or Antonio Gates.
Who are oversized wide receivers. You're never going to ask them to go deep down the field. You just want them to be able to catch a 5-yard pass and maybe run if they're not tackled.
I do think it's a little unfair to lump a guy like Gronkowski or Gates into the same position as someone like John Phillips.
Yeah, or Heath Miller.
Whose job is almost primarily to be a 6th offensive lineman.
Yeah.
I mean, they both are called tight ends, but the job description is so incredibly different that you're right. Guys like Gronk and Gates should be paid more like receivers, and they are. I mean, on the free agent market, it does.
Yeah, they are.
It's just when it comes down to that, franchise tag, that they're being pulled down by some of those tight ends that don't really need to get paid as much because they're just, sixth offensive lineman.
Yeah,
basically.
but if you look at a guy like Ladarius Green, 10 years ago, no one would have drafted him, or someone would have drafted him, attempted to turn him into a wide receiver and said, no, he's too slow. So, yes, obviously the teams that have adapted the tight end position to be more of a pass-catching thing, those are usually the offenses that tend to pass more than run. It's obviously changed in that regard, and those are probably the top targets, Gronkowski and Graham, in those offensive sets. So they're big, injuries for both of those teams.
All right, question number 3.
All right, so the Panthers undefeated. They've got 5 games left. Who's going to beat them? Or are they going to be beaten?
Call it their schedule. I actually did go through this over the weekend, but they certainly have a chance to do it.
See, we got Saints.
I think the Giants is the game at the Giants is the toughest one.
They have Falcons twice.
Certainly a team that has shown in the past that they've spoiled perfect seasons before.
You know who wouldn't surprise me? The Giants wouldn't surprise me that much, but out of these 5 games they have left, watch out for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, because they're still kind of in the race for that division. Jameis Winston, I've never seen a clearer case of a rookie getting better every single week. Every week, he's a better player, a better leader, making smarter decisions, making better throws. By the time that Week 17 game comes around, and it's probably not going to be for the division because the Panthers are so far ahead, but that could be for a wild card spot for them. They could end up being 7-9, 8-8, something like that. And I wouldn't be surprised they pull that one out.
You can make the argument that the Panthers are set up well, though, because the Saints, who they've got next week, are fading. They look terrible yesterday. The Falcons are fading. They got
terrible.
them twice.
Yep.
So if you can get through that Giants game, and they look pretty bad against other than Odell Beckham's catch against the Redskins yesterday, and then you get a Bucs team that probably is not in it in Week 17.
I mean,
then you'd be going for the perfect season.
They're 5-6 right now.
Let me ask you this: if you're the Panthers at this point, and you know you're probably going to get a bye week, barring like a huge collapse, do you want to go undefeated?
Absolutely, 100%. That going undefeated is such a rare thing that if you do it, that's why they build statues.
People will never forget the 2007 Patriots,
Never.
even though they lost the Super Bowl.
Never.
Now, I will make the argument that the Patriots are probably better off to win the Super Bowl this year, having taken that loss yesterday.
Absolutely.
But
Because you remember the Colts when I think it was a few years ago, when they were, what was it, 13-0 or 14-0?
They were 14-0.
They pulled Peyton in the third quarter of that game.
Right. How'd that end out for them?
Not good.
No.
Right.
I mean, the players want to go undefeated. They look at the Miami Dolphins team that went undefeated, that popped champagne every year when, the last team got their first loss. The players want to be part of that. They want to be part of something special
But do you
and
need
legendary.
that loss, though? Do you
No.
kind of need it? Do
No.
you need that loss to kind of humble you, to bring you down?
Absolutely not.
Interesting. I think you do. I would want a loss if I was a coach.
I wouldn't want a loss, but I would use it to my advantage if it happened.
Yeah.
Let's just say that.
Interesting.
All right.
Yeah.
Ferris,
All right.
thank you.
Thank you.
All right, let's spend a few minutes, a little extra time that we normally do previewing the next matchup.
Okay.
Because I think this is an interesting one. It's almost certainly, I think the Broncos have already said that Peyton Manning's not coming back this week. So it's going to be number 17 against number 17. Phillip Rivers against Brock Osweiler at the Q on Sunday. And to me, if you're the Chargers and you're Mike McCoy, who, of course, used to be the offensive coordinator of the Broncos, this is your Super Bowl, right?
Yes.
This is the Super Bowl for the San Diego Chargers this year. So get your 7-layer dip out, order some buffalo wings. This is the Super Bowl for the Chargers this week.
I don't want to put too much importance on this week, but this could end up being one of the biggest weeks in Chargers history. If they find a way to beat the Broncos, who everyone right now, I mean, they just took down the Patriots. Everyone's assuming they're one of the 2 or 3 best teams in the league, right? If you can beat your division rivals, one of the 2 or 3 best teams in the league, the fact that you're 4-8 almost doesn't matter anymore. Not to mention, and this is something that's been hanging over the players, the coaches, the entire franchise, leading up to a home game where, the fans have been criticized for not really showing up. I think Wednesday there's an owners meeting in
Dallas.
In Dallas, Texas, and supposedly what's being talked about is, what would happen in San Diego if the Chargers stayed another year? What would happen in Oakland if the Raiders stayed another year? If they come out on Wednesday or Thursday and say, look, don't worry about it. You're not moving to LA next year. Everyone's staying where they are for another year. The fans show up. They fill up the stadium. The Chargers find a way to upset the Broncos. At that point, I mean, I hate to make this, two huge rivalries, Ohio State and Michigan, where they say, look, in Ohio State, if you beat Michigan, the rest of the games don't matter, and vice versa. It's not that, but in this season it is. If you beat this Broncos team, the next 4 games almost don't matter.
And even though it won't be with Peyton Manning, because they won the last 2 weeks with Osweiler, I don't think it would cheapen it at all.
No, they're better with Osweiler than they were with Manning.
They are, and I'm surprised because I saw the early line this morning, and the Broncos are only favored by 4.
I saw 4.5. I guessed beforehand when I looked at it, I guessed it was going to be 7.5, and my only response to it was Vegas is looking at a quote-unquote rookie quarterback, and they're saying rookie quarterback, divisional game, Brock Osweiler can still make mistakes. He can have that one bad rookie game where he turns the ball over a handful of times, essentially loses the game himself, and that could totally happen. But right now it doesn't look like he's that guy.
All right, a couple tweets in from Faux Philip Rivers says the stadium, 60% Chargers fans. Is the Jacksonville fan base worse than San Diego? So you're saying that that what was the Everbank Stadium or wherever they played was 70% Chargers fans yesterday?
It didn't look like that to me, and it didn't sound like that either. And I was mentioning on Twitter during the game that when good things happened for the Jaguars, which were somewhat few and far between, that stadium erupted. They exploded. And so the Jaguar fans, I mean, I know that they've tarped off parts of that stadium because they were having a hard time selling it out. But those fans, the ones that are actually in the stands, they're filling up the seats that remain, and they're loud.
SDFan21 says, Chargers just need to develop a culture and belief in just winning games. Look at the Panthers. It's kind of scary to look at the Panthers because
they shouldn't be winning like this.
Well, and Ron Rivera was kind of Mike McCoy a few years ago.
Yeah.
He was a coach who was conservative, who seemed lost, was about to get fired.
Yeah.
And then pulled what Mike McCoy did yesterday and decided to let's just
start going for it.
Let's start going for it.
Let's
go crazy, nothing to lose. And he absolutely has turned around his coaching career, his team, and he's got the Carolina Panthers maybe poised as Super Bowl favorites, at least out of the NFC at this point.
Ron Rivera is going to win Coach of the Year.
He should, absolutely.
And he's even pulled back on that aggressiveness somewhat from where it was 2 years ago. Each year he's gone a little bit more back. He's still not one of the more conservative coaches in the league, but even if Mike McCoy pushed towards where Ron Rivera is, I think we'd see a lot more results like we did yesterday with the Chargers getting a win and Mike McCoy, drunk happy at the podium after the game. It's interesting to compare any NFL team to the Panthers because I think right now the Panthers have the best or the second best player in the entire league, and him plus that defense is what's equaling wins. It's not necessarily a culture or an entire team. It's a dominating defense with an unstoppable quarterback.
And then apparently a bunch of people are calling you out in your comments about Bortles. Now, I don't remember anything overly controversial. I know he had the 2 passes, you said, when he crossed the line of scrimmage.
Yeah.
Did you say the Jags would have won if they hadn't called those, or what?
I said if he was a yard shorter and not over the line of scrimmage, the Jaguars would have won that game.
Right. Although, hopefully, the Chargers would have not left the guy open until after Blake Bortles crossed the line of scrimmage.
It wasn't as if he crossed the line of scrimmage then waited 4 seconds. He was essentially throwing as he was crossing the line of scrimmage. I think one of those was caught and one of those wasn't. But still, the point remains. The Chargers were, just a couple of penalties away from giving up 2 touchdowns instead of 2 field goals.
All right, Bolts Brown Bag Nation has spoken, John, and in our poll question of what was the Chargers' best performance of the season so far,
Packers, isn't it?
The Browns and Jags wins only got 5% of the vote.
Okay.
The Lions win, which you argued for, 16% of the vote.
Oh.
The loss to the Packers getting 74% of the vote. I don't know how telling that is about this season. The fans think the best performance the Chargers turned in all year, they didn't even win the game.
And all I saw when I watched that Packers game was that the Packers were not trying very hard. They were not at all concerned with the Chargers until maybe the last 5 minutes of that game. So I put that more on the Packers than I do the Chargers, but I don't know. Maybe I'm shortchanging Phillip Rivers.
All right, visualize world peace and visualize John's scenario of the owners coming out this week, delaying a vote on L.A. for another year, the Chargers fans coming together on Sunday, drowning out the Broncos fans, the Chargers rising up and upsetting Denver, and everything will be so right with the world next Monday when we return for another edition of Bolts Brown Bag that I may have to rescind my call to fire Mike McCoy. I wouldn't count on it.
I can't wait to see that day.
All right, for John Gennaro, I'm Ben Higgins. Thanks for joining us on another edition of Bolts Brown Bag only on 10news.com.